If you want guaranteed success as a writer and getting results with the law of attraction, then you are going to love today's interview with Dr. Joe Vitale. It's taken from the Inner Game of Writing Summit. He shares why it's important to act immediately on your inspiration as a writer, how he edits and writes, and how he markets his books. You are going to love this interview. Hello and welcome to the Write the Book Inside You podcast. Tips, tools and interviews for coaches and healers like you who want to write a non-fiction book to boost your visibility, clients and cash flow while making a difference. I'm your host, Carol Westmore, a multi-published author and energy psychology tapping book coach. Now let's jump into today's episode. Joe Vitale is a globally famous author of 80 plus books and counting, marketing guru, movie, TV and radio personality, musician, and one of the top 50 inspirational speakers in the world. He shot to fame when he appeared in the movie The Secret, was interviewed on Larry King Live, and has since become the world's most famous law of attraction expert, sharing the missing secret to miracles and manifesting and attracting money now. He is both a thinker and a healer, certified in modalities like NLP, Reiki, Qigong, clinical hypnotherapy, and an ordained minister and doctor of metaphysical science. I think I'd just like to mention some of my favorite and maybe some of your best-known bestsellers before you come on, Dr. Joe, and that is The Attractor Factor, Attract Money Now, Zero Limits and At Zero about Herperner, The Miracle, Anything is Possible, and The Art and Science of Getting Results. Welcome, Dr. Joe.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I've met you 20 years ago at your Miracles Weekend.
Yes.
And you kindly wrote the foreword to my book. Now today is the first time we've actually been on since then. So will you give us the 30,000-foot view of your life? I love your origin story.
A long story made short. I wanted to be an author when I was a teenager. I had wanted to be a lot of different things, but I so loved books, which you can tell from the background here. I still love books, that I decided I wanted to be an author. And I began my pursuit as a teenager, but it was not an overnight success. I struggled, was homeless for a while. I was in poverty for 10 years. Throughout all of it, I was writing and sending out manuscripts. You have to remember that was way before the internet. I wasn't published as an author until 1984. That was my first book. And it came and went. And that's when I learned that publishers don't know about marketing books. And that was a turning point because I had to learn marketing. Mm-hmm. I learned marketing from myself in my book. My next book wasn't for another 10 years, around 1995. But by then I had learned about marketing and I started to make those books, that one and the ones that followed, pretty successful. And then the internet was coming along and I was one of the first to go online as a pioneer, kind of stumbling my way around like all of us were doing back then. But I wrote one of the first books on internet marketing back in 96 or 97 called Cyber Writing. And so I was gaining a reputation as being an internet marketer, as a copywriter, as an author. And as the internet was coming around and I was fumbling my way around it, I got a little bit of an online fame from that. But the big turning point was when I was invited to be in a movie because of one of the books I wrote. And that movie was called The Secret. Well, The Secret blew me and my reputation into outer space. They know me on Mars now because of that. And I've been all around the world. And until the pandemic was continuing to travel to countries I didn't know existed when I was growing up. And all because of The Secret, all because of my books. And even now, I'm still, while being kind of chained at home during a pandemic, still writing books. I have, I think, 5 or 6 books that came out in the last couple of years. I have a couple other ones that'll be coming out very soon. So I'm still following that childhood passion. Yet it was not an overnight success. And that's the thing I want people to know. I was persistent. I had my intention. I kept going towards it. I kept working. I kept trying. I kept falling. I kept getting back up. And there were breakthroughs and breakdowns along the way to achieve this level of kind of minor league celebrity success. But it's pretty cool.
Well, of course, I followed you before you were famous in The Secret from South Africa. I've always thought, I think your one book was Spiritual Marketing. And I was part of your hypnotic marketing course. Part of me doesn't want to ask this question, but I'm sure you get asked it over and over. Where do your ideas come from? How can you be so prolific?
I love that you ask the questions you don't want to ask. I think that's where we all should go. Just be authentic. If you have an itch to ask something, here's your chance. Grab it. Where do ideas come from? They come from everywhere. I will be reading a book, and as I'm reading, a thought will occur to me as a trigger to the stimulus of whatever it is that I'm reading. One of the best examples I can give you is way back around 1990. I was reading a book called the Robert Collier Letter Book. Robert Collier was a metaphysical writer. I didn't know until I read that book that he was also a marketing guy. And so I'm reading the Robert Collier Letter Book. And as I'm reading it, he had a mention in there about a fellow named Bruce Barton. And something in me just said, who's Bruce Barton? And what happened to him? And suddenly I was on a mission. I was on a quest. I had this new ideas. I had to find out who Bruce Barton was. And I remember now, I'm broke. I'm unknown. I had had one book published 10 years before. So there's nobody urging me on, nobody paying me, nobody encouraging me, nobody dangling a carrot saying, hey, if you go and pursue this, you'll turn it into a book and, you'll get fame and fortune. None of that. I'm doing it because it's an idea I believe in, even when I can't explain to you why. I persisted, I did all the research, and I ended up writing a book about Bruce Barton that became one of my early phenomenal successes called The 7 Lost Secrets of Success. The 7 Lost Secrets of Success was published by a small publisher. It was his first book. He wanted to be a publisher. I needed a publisher at the time. And together we made that book notorious. There was one company that heard me on a radio show talking about the 7 Lost Secrets of Success, and they bought 19,000 copies of that book. Think back, because the book's gone on. It's in print now. Another publisher has picked it up. I've expanded it. So it's had a long history from 1990 or 1992. The idea came as I was reading the book. I was just reading the Robert Collier Letter Book. Thousands of other people, if not millions, have read the same book. They didn't get the idea. I believe we're all getting ideas all the time. We get them, whether it's from reading, we're walking through the park, we're walking our dog, we're going for an airplane ride, any number of things. And ideas come to us. Most of us dismiss them. Most of us talk ourselves out of them. They'll say, not me, not now. I don't have the experience. I don't have the connection. Who cares? I could have said any of that. And I've written over 80 books, as you pointed out. I can tell you stories of where the ideas came from pretty much for every book. And I'm a musician. I have 15 albums. I can tell you stories of where the ideas came from. The only difference between me and somebody else is that when the idea came, I went, oh, cool idea. Let me go do it. Where somebody else probably got an idea and they said, I don't have the time.
That's a perfect answer. And once you get that idea, how do you get it out so quickly? Do you give yourself a sprint?
I love that question, because there is a secret to getting ideas produced quickly. And that secret is this. When an idea comes to any of us, there is a charge to it. It's a happy charge. It's that charge where you go, wow, that's a cool idea. That'd be great if somebody did that. And then you start to think, well, that'd be great if I did that. And in that moment, with that energy that's coming in, with the rush of a good idea, it's that very energy that I use to create the idea. In other words, a lot of people might go, well, that was a great idea. And they get their little pen out. And at best, they make a note. Good idea. And if they get to the note weeks or months or even years later, and they look at it and go, wow, it's still a good idea. The energy's gone, though. The energy that came with it, the lightning strike that hit when the idea came to you has a bunch of energy to it. You can ride that energy. I have done that. Let me tell you another quick story. I was given my first PC when I was living in a dump in Houston. It must have been around 1990, somewhere in there. I was given a PC by a wealthy man that I had. He came to one of my adult education classes. I was teaching classes on writing. He said, "You need a computer." And he gave me his used old IBM PC, the kind with floppy disk, and you got to put the disk in. Then when you go to save it, you got to take that disk out, put another disk out. The day I learned how to operate it, I wrote a book. I was learning how to put the disk in, and I'm learning how to type on it. And I got the big monitor. And it's my first computer, and I'm kind of giddy. I'm a little kid, and I'm broke. I'm unknown. I'm struggling, and I'm trying. I got a computer, and I remember thinking, "Boy, I think I got the hang of this." And I wrote a little booklet that was called "Turbocharge Your Writing." And it revealed a 7-step formula for writing. It was the very 7 steps that I was using at the time. I just thought, well, this is kind of cool. So what does that mean? An idea was coming to me. And what did I do? I didn't delay. I just said, well, the computer's here. I'm here. I'm excited. Let me start typing. And I wrote that little book that afternoon. And because I was teaching those writing classes at the time, the next writing class I went to, I said, "Hey, I have a new book." And I had gone to Kinko's, which at that time was the local print store. And I had little manuscripts. And I just said, "Turbocharge your writing, $20," and people would buy it. I acted on the idea is the point. And the idea got done because of my enthusiasm that came with the idea.
I love that. Do you then say, okay, the energy is in this book. I'm going to send it now to the editor?
I would say for the first 75 books, I didn't let anybody edit. I was ruthless about my own editing process. I had learned, and this is a writing tip for anybody that wants to write anything, I had learned to divide the process of writing and editing as two very separate, distinct processes. And this is what I taught in my writing classes. And it was the idea that when you sit down to write, you just write. You don't edit, you don't second guess, you're not critical, you're doing your best just to get it on paper or just to get it on the computer. Brain dump it. And you don't care if there's mistakes, things are left out, it's out of order, it doesn't seem to make sense. All you're doing is dumping. That's it. And so when I was done, I knew later in a separate process, I'd have to go edit it. I didn't want anybody touching it. This was my baby. Each one of these, I don't have biological kids, but I have 80 kids, or the ones that came from my brain, my soul, my heart, my spirit. So I had learned to fine tune my writing. I remember I had written a book on P.T. Barnum called "There's a Customer Born Every Minute." And there was an author that I greatly admired who inspired me. And he called me and he said, "I read your book on P.T. Barnum." He says, "It's fantastically written." He says, "Who was your editor at the publisher?" And I was kind of shocked because I thought, do people use editors at publishing houses? I thought you did it yourself. And I said, I didn't use an editor. Most recently, over the last few years, I relaxed a little bit and allowed other people to edit the book. I still write it, then I go and edit it, and I make it the best I can make it. And then I'm a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more trusting, and I'll let an editor come in to look for typos, to look for sentence structure and inconsistencies and things like that.
The sponsor for today's podcast episode is the Inner Game of Writing bestseller anthology, which is a treasure trove of golden nuggets for winning in your writing life as an author or creative entrepreneur. Contributors include not only the 20-plus speakers from the Inner Game of Writing Summit 2022, but also trailblazers and leaders in the publishing and book writing universe who are sharing their best secrets for avoiding the pitfalls and ensuring your success as a writer. We still have 12 places available for contributors who feel they could add value to the anthology with their expertise as writers, publishers, or coaches. If this sounds like you, then send me an email at cwestmoreyes cwestmoreYes@gmail.com. That's cwestmoreYes@gmail.com with the word contributor as the subject line. So when it comes to the marketing and an idea of how to market, do you also have the same sort of flash of idea?
I get as much help as I can, but it all begins with me. So first of all, as I'm writing, I have an eye on marketing. An example, just to go off of the story I've already shared, when I wanted to write that book on Bruce Barton, I knew not to call it Bruce Barton. From a marketing standpoint, there's people watching right now, they don't know who Bruce Barton is. And so if I had written a book called Bruce Barton, it would have been a dud. And so from the beginning, I had to be thinking, okay, I want to write about this guy, Bruce Barton, but I can't write it as a biography because the market would be next to nothing. I have to think of what will bring in the most readers that would then learn about Bruce Barton. And because I was writing self-help books, it just was a natural extension for me to go, well, let me see what his success principles are. And so it became the 7 lost secrets of success. That is purely because I'm thinking as a marketer. But I got Bruce Barton's name in there, and I did it in a way that still had marketing in my mindset. So as I'm writing, I have a little bit of awareness of the marketing from day one. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important because once the book's done, who's going to buy it? If I wrote it all because of me and just my interest, then the market for it is going to be very hard to find and probably very, very small. I have an eye on the marketing from day one. When the book is done, marketing is the never-ending process. Mm. You have to always market what you do. I tell people either you have to market it or you have to hire somebody to market it. But as soon as you stop marketing it, the book will die. Even Bruce Barton, as much as I've been throwing his name around right now, in the 1920s, he was a household name. His books were bestsellers. He wrote numerous books, some of which are still in print right now, like The Man Nobody Knows. It's still in print. You can go buy it on Amazon. But he is forgotten because he died in 1967. And even before that, he stopped his own marketing. As soon as the marketing stops, unless there's a rare case where a book is so great that the underground swell of supporters cause a movement to keep it alive, most books will die.
Okay, talking of underground movement, let's move on to the Herperner story, Zero Limits and At Zero. And would you say that was a bridge in your life from a spiritual point of view or a consciousness point of view?
In many points of view, you are absolutely correct. The irony is I discovered Ho'oponopono as the movie The Secret was coming out. And so the world was rushing to look at The Secret and talk about the law of attraction. And I went on Larry King twice. And Oprah and other people are doing these big features. And I'm being asked to talk around the world on law of attraction. And it's at that whirlwind of interest in the law of attraction in me is when I discovered something that was better than the law of attraction. It was Ho'oponopono. And here I am learning about Ho'oponopono and almost not wanting to talk about the law of attraction because it's like, I left first grade. I'm going on to the higher levels here. But I had to juggle both. And you are correct. Ho'oponopono was a turning point in my life, in my career, and it's something I still refer to. I've written 3 books on it at this point. The first one, as you mentioned, was Zero Limits. And Zero Limits told the most remarkable story. I'll give a condensed version of it because it's incredibly powerful. It's the true story of a therapist who helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals at a state hospital in Hawaii. And the interesting thing was he didn't heal them by working on them directly. He healed them by working on himself. And when I first heard the story, I dismissed it. It's like, I believe in magic and miracles, but it sounds like an urban legend. How does anybody work on themselves and change other people? And you're talking about mentally ill criminals who had to be shackled or sedated because they were violent in a hospital for the criminally insane. But I heard the story a couple times and I thought, if it's at all true, somebody needs to tell it. And I found the therapist. His name is Dr. E. Haleakala Len. I talked to him on the phone the first time. Then he invited me to one of his events. And then, long story short, I did events with him. And we wrote the first book together, Zero Limits, explaining what he did. And what he was doing is this Hawaiian healing method called Ho'oponopono, something where you go inside yourself, your awareness is self-directed, inner direct, and you say 4 key phrases as a kind of prayer or petition to your connection to what I call the divine. Somebody else could just call it nature, the cosmos, God, all that is, the great something. Joseph Campbell called it the great mystery, the thing that's bigger than all of us. And the 4 phrases you're saying inside yourself as kind of a prayer are, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So you're saying these inside yourself, and what you're doing and what he was doing is doing your best to remove the feelings and the perceptions and the judgments of what you were seeing. So when he looked at the mentally ill criminals, he largely looked at their charts. So he's looking at their charts and he's feeling repulsed. He's feeling anger. He's feeling grief. He's feeling embarrassed. He's feeling helpless. It's those feelings that he's saying the 4 phrases on. He's trying to reduce the feelings in himself so he can get to a place of peace, serenity, neutrality. The interesting thing is, as he reduces those feelings in himself, the patients get better. This is the miracle. Mm-hmm. As I said, I've written 3 books, Zero Limits, and then 10 years later, I wrote At Zero. And then I think it was last year, I wrote The 5th Phrase. So I've been hearing from people from all walks of life that have been practicing this since I brought it to the world around, I think, 2005, could have been 2006. People have used this for everything: financial concerns, health concerns, their pets don't feel well, their inner relationships aren't well, their sales are down, they have cancer, they're dealing with audits with the government, the IRS. They've used it for everything, and I have too. It's a deceptively simple method of diluting your own inner beliefs and limitations so that you can create and allow and attract the reality you would prefer to have.
It's always stuck with me that you said you used to clean on your books, as you know, yes, before you sent them out into the world. Just share that little, because I'm asking people for their inner game, maybe some of their habits and rituals. Would that be one of yours, that you clean, which is the Herperner Method, on every book you write?
Yes, ever since I learned it, yes. Because this is actually a big subject, because first of all, I was homeless, as I mentioned, and I was in poverty for a very long time. And what I didn't realize is that I had beliefs in me that in order for me to be a successful author, I had to struggle. That's one of the big beliefs right there. So I had to erase that belief. Then there are beliefs that were in me and that are still in a lot of people, that money is bad, money is evil, that money corrupts in some way, shape, or form, that money is a dark force. And I had to clean that in me, because money's neutral. It's just paper and coin. There's nothing magical about it. We all feed meaning to it. And so I had to work on myself to be okay with success, be okay with success being easy and not having to struggle for it, be okay with books coming to me easily and not having to bleed at the typewriter, as Ernest Hemingway had said. You just sit at the typewriter and bleed. It's like, well, maybe for him, you don't have to do it that way. I was greatly influenced by Jack London, and he was dead by the age of 40 as a suicide. Yep. He wrote 50-some books, and some of them American classic literature, like The Call of the Wild and Martin Eden and The Sea Wolf. But I was trying to model my life after his, where I should have just modeled his writing style and not his lifestyle.
But you had to learn to do that in time.
Bringing it up because I want everybody to hear it. I want everybody to hear it. If they're wanting to write, I want them to know it can be easy. If they're wanting to be a success, I want them to know peace with success and make peace with money. And yes, I'm cleaning on my own books, just as I was cleaning on myself. so that my books can go out into the world. They're babies. They're going to go into the world without me there to touch people. And I want them to touch with potency and power and purity. So I'm cleaning on me, my books, my relationship to them, and to the world at large.
So in that book, The Art and Science of Results, let's just go through those 4 stages, because along the way, you're clearing beliefs, not only with Herperner. Then one of them is EFT tapping, my favorite, and another is neveralizing. What happens when you go from those 4 stages? I know the first one is victimhood. Talk us through the 4 and how belief clearing in all its many forms can get us to the final one.
First of all, when I wrote Zero Limits, I said there were 3 stages of consciousness, which shows that that's what I understood at the time. But as we continue working on ourselves and clearing our beliefs and our limitations, we keep growing, we keep expanding. And since then, because of all the inner work, I now know there's 4 stages of consciousness. And I write about them in the book you're referring to, The Art and Science of Getting Results. And the 4 stages, the first one is victimhood. And it's not a stage of awakening at all. It's a stage of feeling like the world's out to get you, that you don't have too much power, you don't have too much control. Henry David Thoreau said the vast majority of men, and he would say women today, are leading lives of quiet desperation. And that's how I felt during the homeless years and poverty years. It's like, I have a dream. I want to be an author. But look at me, I'm suffering, I'm desperate, I'm not happy, I'm feeling like a victim. So the first stage is victimhood, and the vast majority of people are there. They're complaining, they feel stuck, they blame everybody else and everything else, but they're not taking any responsibility, largely because they don't have the consciousness to know better. If they're lucky, maybe one of my books, maybe the movie The Secret, maybe some other book, some other movie, some person enters their life and suddenly there's an aha, and they enter the second stage of awakening, which is empowerment. Empowerment is wonderful because it's exhilarating. You now feel like I can have, do, or be anything. I can visualize it. I can achieve it. You can read Napoleon Hill's works, Think and Grow Rich, and all the other ones, and take all that to heart and start to use it. And you can start to get results. And it's a wonderful place to be. It certainly beats victimhood. Yet, it's only the second stage. There's a third stage. At some point in empowerment, you butt heads into something you can't change. In my case, well, my father had died, my mother had died, my best friend had died, a family member attempted suicide. I went into a divorce that ended up being a 3-year persecution of my life and business. Pandemic hits, shuts down my travel, which is the biggest income source. And all of that was something I couldn't do anything about. I can feel empowered, but I can't bring my father back to life. I can feel empowered, but I haven't been able to cure COVID yet. So at that point, you realize you don't have total control. You're not a victim because you still have control of yourself and you have limited control over what you can do in the world. So you end up moving into the third stage, which is surrender. Surrender isn't the negative thing where you wave a white flag and say, I give up. It's the surrender where you join forces with a higher power. And the higher power, an atheist would say it's just nature, which is still a higher power. Or a more spiritual person could say it's the great something, it's the divine, it's God. And you're more powerful then because you've joined forces. It's not just your little ego, which was strutting around feeling empowered, but now you join forces with the supernatural, the superhuman, the super force of all time. So you're more empowered than ever before because you've surrendered to the higher power. That's the third stage. There's a fourth stage, though. And the fourth stage is what I call awakening itself. You can't make an awakening. You can prepare for an awakening, but you can't make it happen because that would be your ego trying to outsmart your own ego. It's a game you can't win. Awakening comes by grace. And that's when the great something bestows on you the awakening that you are the great something. And it lives and breathes and speaks and writes through you. That's the quick overview. Okay.
So, Dr. Joe, to wrap up this fantastic interview, which I really feel on fire about. I can see why you are MrFire.com. Could you give us what you would tell your younger self?
I think it was a radio show a few weeks ago, and they asked a similar question where they said, Joe, with everything that you've written and with everything that you've read and everything that you've done and everything you've accomplished, what's the one thing What's the one thing that always works?
I like
And I
it.
thought, Jesus, that's really putting me on the hot seat. Only one? I have to give only one thing? And I thought about it, but it did occur to me there is one thing. And this one thing beats talent. It beats luck. It beats connections. It beats coincidences. It beats virtually anything anybody can mention. And what's the one thing? Persistence. Persistence wins the race. If you get up every day and you keep going for your dream, knowing some days you're going to fall and some days you're going to win and some days it's going to rain and some days it's going to be sunny and some days you're going to slip on the ice and some days it's going to be easy peasy. If you just keep going, you will win.
And where can people go to get your free gift?
Vitale's my last name, Vitale, lifemastery.com. There are several things for sale, but there are also several things that are free, courses and things like that. And I also have a membership program where the first 14 days are free. So vitalelifemastery.com probably would be a fun place to go. My books are on Amazon. So you just go to Amazon and type in my name and the book you mentioned and Zero Limits and a lot of other books are there. My music is on everywhere from Amazon to Spotify to iTunes to wherever you might hear good music. People haven't seen The Secret. I would encourage them to because it's helped a lot of people. It's on Amazon and Netflix, and I think it's at thesecret.tv.
So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, and it's been a real pleasure connecting with you, and I wish you all the best going forward. Want a free gift to inspire you further on your book writing adventure? My free checklist, 5 book hook tips to kickstart your book writing journey, will help you get clarity on the key essentials to make your book a winner. Download it at writethebookinsideyou.com/free gift. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, a big virtual hug and keep writing.